All right, everybody excited? Or do you have a post-lunch hangover like I do? I went to that British place. It was amazing. All right, so if you're looking for David Snowpack, by the way, he's not here. So anybody who needs to leave, feel free to take off. He sent me in his place, and Will's going to hopefully help me out. I don't know if you can see that over my big head, but we're going to talk about CiviCRM secrets for Drupalers. Anybody know what CiviCRM is? You guys all know what CiviCRM is? All right, you don't? Okay, good, because I have some slides that kind of talk about that, so that's good. All right, and this is the jiggly question mark. Not that I can answer everything, but if you have a question, shoot it out. Maybe somebody else can answer it too. All right, so this is me. I don't know why we have to do this. Do we have to have stuff about ourselves? So this is me. So I've been doing Drupal for a long time, longer than 10 years, I guess, which is crazy. David pointed that out to me this year, that it was over 10 years. And I got Will over here, so he's on the hook for helping me. And stop me if I go too fast or too slow or whatever. And the question mark guy, that's David Snowpack. He's not here. He's in an undisclosed secret bunker, right?
Good for him.
So he's the brilliant guy. This was this whole thing that we're working on here that we call Round Earth is Drupal 8 CiviCRM distribution, and it was really David's idea. This is our story, how we accidentally fell into CiviCRM. So myDropWizard, we do Drupal support and maintenance. So we handle if you guys are developers or agencies, or if you have a business or whatever, if you have a Drupal site that's built, you can come to us and we can support it, and you can go on to the next project, or whatever. If your developer left or is leaving, we can kind of fill in the gaps, and that even includes Drupal 6. So there's a number of Drupal 6 sites that are still out there. The ones that are still left are usually pretty hard to move on, so they're doing some important stuff. So anyway, we do tons of Drupal. And I stole this from David. He said we have 30 plus years between us. So the kind of the whole thing about myDropWizard is about the support and maintenance. And so in doing that, we've run into lots of nonprofit organizations. And something like, I think this is on the list here. So the CiviCRM is kind of new to us. We kind of ran into it by accident. I have all these funny little slides. But kind of the crucial thing here is that 40% of our customers were nonprofits. And half of that 40%, half of them use CiviCRM. And the ones that use CiviCRM, they care more about the CiviCRM end of things than the Drupal side. There's all sorts of reasons. But again, we do support and maintenance, and because CiviCRM is so tightly coupled with Drupal, we found ourselves in a position where we had to support it. So, and my little gear guy, I think I accidentally put that in twice, but it's cool. So what we found with CiviCRM is that these nonprofits, they got a lot more value out of CiviCRM than Drupal. So if they'd have a Drupal CiviCRM site, they would be doing CiviCRM things all the time, daily. It's a constituent management system, whereas Drupal is really focused on the marketing end of things, right? For most organizations, if you deal with like a nonprofit, right? So they might be doing other things, but by and large, if they're a nonprofit, they're using Drupal for more of the marketing angle, the public-facing stuff, and they're using CiviCRM for almost everything else, including like membership, like selling memberships and all that kind of stuff. So CiviCRM is about the action. So Drupal's about the telling people about their mission, and CiviCRM is about actually performing the mission. So whereas like Drupal, you might interface with Drupal as a nonprofit a few times a month. CiviCRM, you're dealing with that every day, probably multiple times a day. Okay. And so for lots of things. So CiviCRM has lots of built-in features. So it handles events very well, handles memberships, and of course handles like CRM types of things, like any CRM handles. So like you could use it for customers, but if you're a nonprofit, you're using it to kind of coordinate with your volunteers, with your board members, with donators, all sorts of things like that. And again, so that I don't feel like I'm giving a book report, ask questions. That's my reminder to tell you to ask questions. So the kind of the thing about CiviCRM, like why CiviCRM and Drupal, it doesn't really it doesn't have to be with Drupal, which is another advantage of CiviCRM. So CiviCRM, of course, works with WordPress, works with Joomla, but also works with Drupal 6, 7, and 8. So if you want to, if you want to move between any of these platforms, you can take your CiviCRM stuff and you can move to a different platform. So whereas Drupal has a certain amount of lock-in, even moving between Drupal 7 and Drupal 8, as we all know, can be problematic. Moving between different versions of CiviCRM or even different platforms that are helping to host it, like that's not a big deal. And and I should say, it also works with Backdrop. All right, and also, I guess it goes without saying, CiviCRM is open source. Okay, so not only is it there's a lot of similarities with Drupal, but there's some key differences too. So anyway, what is a CRM? And you guys probably have an inkling about this, but CRMs at their core are kind of like a Rolodex or like a collection of business cards. You have demographic information, you have information about the people. So it's really at its core about people and the relationships of the people. So let's see. So you could have you can add any kind of fields you want. You can have in terms of nonprofits, you can have customers, members, stakeholders, or also like potentials. So like if you're used to something like Salesforce or HubSpot, those are good for tracking leads that turn into customers. You can do those kinds of things in any CRM. And from a nonprofit standpoint, though, CiviCRM is really kind of second to none. Jump in if I gloss over anything. I work better at the dialogue than a monologue.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, so the fundamental core of CiviCRM, it's similar to any database-driven thing. It's a bunch of entities that are related. So Elliot just showed contacts. We're going to see several other varieties of things a little later on here, but that means it's just all of these things and how they're related. And CiviCRM is just the system that allows us to manage it, and it's been very much tailored for the.
How long do we have? What time do we get out of here?
It's the last one. Who cares?
Oh, all right. So I hope you guys got drinks. So kind of like Will was saying about all these things, they're entities, but much like Drupal, you can organize the entities and they can interrelate. So this little chart here, an individual can belong to, could be an employee, it can be a part of a household, and you can group things by other criteria too. So, like this would be an example of like a smart group. You can group individuals into a mailing list, or you can put them in like we have here, the Midwest region. So you can create groups. So there's some automatic tracking built into CiviCRM. So you can track meeting attendance. You can track if someone got an email sent to them, an automated email, a manual email. It even integrates with SMS. So one of the cool things that I'm going to show you in kind of a demo is you can send a newsletter to everyone in a particular group, or you can search on a manually created ad hoc group that you just put people in. So like we're all in this room and I put all your names into it. I can send a newsletter out to you, but we can also create smart groups based on any kind of criteria. So if we want to say everybody that's in Twin Cities, automatically put them in a group and we can send things off to them. So some of these things are any CRM, but CiviCRM or any CRM, you can create cases where you can track things through like a life cycle. And CiviCRM in particular is really good at coordinating events, like I said. But so that includes everything from like kind of promoting the event in interfacing with Drupal to publicize it, but also RSVPs, payments, and recording attendance so that it kind of cycles back into your feed of things. So let's say you guys signed up to come to an event and you didn't show up. I can send you an email the week after, hey, sorry we missed you, or hey, thanks for attending. I'm sorry, yeah.
The payments area?
Yeah.
You mentioned a couple times.
Yeah.
Does it come with something already, or do you have
Totally
to
does. So yeah, so sort of, I don't know if it's officially like an extension or built in, but it's basically built in. It's authorized on PayPal.
Oh, cool.
It's built in, yeah.
And then there's another payment processor very widely used in the nonprofit space called IATS. So they're a extension, similar like a Drupal module. Civic extension exists to allow payments through that as well.
Cool.
That's an awesome question. Thank you. So HR is a big function in all organizations. You can manage employees or volunteers. So one thing that people here might ask, right, is why not just do this in Drupal? If it's just a bunch of entities and relationships, why not just build it in Drupal, right? And you could totally do that. But part of what, maybe unlike some of the rest of you, part of what attracted me to Drupal way back in the day was, everybody used to roll their own content management system, like coding it up in PHP, which, now you'd realize is a terrible idea, right? The thing that really stuck with me about Drupal is, of course it's open source, we all know that, but the huge advantage is that smarter people than me came across the same problems I'm going to have, right? So the problems are already solved. So rather than trying to reinvent how to organize people, this is already kind of done. So, Drupal, of course, is super flexible, which is one of the reasons why Drupal is great with CiviCRM. Drupal has entities, has fields, and we can build relationships between all those. But, there have been some attempts at this. If you guys have looked at any of these, there's CRM Core, there's Red Hen, and these tend to be more of, instead of like CiviCRM is more out of the box and just you can kind of start using it. These are building blocks that allow you to kind of build your own CRM, which is sort of the Drupal way of doing things, right? Drupal Commerce and all these other things. So the big but why. One thing that I didn't touch on is CiviCRM, because it is so cross-platform, it actually has a huge ecosystem of users. It's not as big as Drupal, it's not as big as WordPress, but in the specific space that it occupies, that it's actually pretty successful. Will and David were up in Calgary for Civic Camp, right? Civic Camp Calgary?
Right.
Yeah. So they have events just like this, and so there's people that are tackling the actual CRM issues head on. Whereas like rolling your own with Drupal or using CRM Core, Red Hen, there's 4 dedicated full-time employees working on features just for CiviCRM. So that's pretty cool.
There's also a fair amount of support from the actual users. Users meaning from organizations that use CiviCRM. There's a lot of support from them in terms of resources, in terms of like contributed help back, as well as financial resources to Civi to hire staff to produce CiviCRM and things along those lines.
So did I sell everybody on CiviCRM?
Look, there's one more thing to sell in this community. If I'm not wrong, like I think I'm right about this, there's a huge amount of Twin Cities original development of CiviCRM.
I don't know. Is that true? That may very well be true. Yeah.
I think it's got
So for around here, if that's the case, then even more so. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So the CiviCRM was originally built by 2 Silicon Valley developers. I'm not sure.
So maybe I'm wrong.
I don't remember them by name, but this was probably almost 15 years ago.
Yeah, it's been around a long time. Yeah.
But between then and now, I'm not sure who's touched it, and they may well have a lot of influence from developers here.
That's a good ad. I feel like we should look that up.
We can ask the guy at the pizza truck tonight because he's the one that told me that.
Oh, really? Okay. All right, everybody, we gotta nab the guy at the pizza truck. So, the one of the things that is actually super awesome, and totally could have been done in Drupal, but it's already done in CiviCRM. There's this awesome newsletter builder, for building emails, just like using like MailChimp or Constant Contact, that kind of thing. And that's basically built in. It's an add-on to CiviCRM, but like it's one of the main add-ons, and it's very easy to use. So, like I said, compared to the hosted solutions, everybody's probably used MailChimp. I used Constant Contact for a long time. I feel like this is every bit as good as either of those solutions. Partly because it's even if you use MailChimp and you can build your own integrations, and you can you can use webhooks, and you can figure out ways to get the information you need, right? But this is built in. It's already there. So it's already part of the system where you're having your events and you're tracking your volunteers. So like, why reinvent the wheel? Again, CiviCRM is open source. It's based on a database, and so like, there's this immense power by integrating all these multiple channels. You don't have to go through this import-export exercise like you sometimes have to with MailChimp. You can mix and match promotions. So, thinking like a business, I guess, but like even a nonprofit, if you want to hit up people who have donated in the last 6 months and you want to hit them up again, or people who have not donated, you can hit these people up and you can try different channels and see what works for different people based on different criteria. So just having like that database of information and the feedback loop is kind of huge. And one thing that, I don't know what the prevailing wisdom about this stuff is, and I think Drupal gets a bad rap for being difficult. I don't think it's super difficult, but there are some things when it's pointed out to all the rest of us can be kind of hard. Like having a field that's labeled Boolean, like that's probably not a super user-friendly type of thing. I haven't had that experience with CiviCRM, and it's hard to think like a new user for any of us. But I didn't have to get any training. I didn't have to Google anything like how to do things. Like, it's very intuitive, very easy to use. So, all the boring stuff is done. Let's take a look and do a little demo. If my mouse is working. You know what? It might be this. Yeah, I had my mouse on. That's why it wasn't working. All right. So this, just like, this is a regular Drupal site. I'm not using the other one because I didn't have a login. But so I use this one a lot for demos. So this is just like an example site. Looks very familiar to you. This is Drupal 8. The main difference here is there's this little menu that says CiviCRM.
So this is actually our Rounders platform. Drupal 8 CiviCRM installed inside of it. The Drupal 8 side of it, we've got a couple content types set up, basic default configurations, things like that. And then Elliot's going to walk through the Civi.
Yeah, and it's like some of this, like I don't think this is on the latest version, but so it's even better than this in some cases. Kind of at the core of things, so we have this extra menu that kind of pops up at the top. If you guys have used CiviCRM, I apologize for the repetition, but it's to me, it's very much organized in the way that you would need to use this stuff. So there's this search box right here where you can search by name or email. The whole thing is built around
you can actually click
people.
Into that, and it'll give you a whole bunch more options.
Click, yeah. But so perfect example, right? So it's like, you can expose more functionality, but like the basics are right there. So the kinds of things you need to do, it's right there. So let's see if I'm in here. Yep. So like if I need to pull myself up, boom, I can search. Theoretically, there we go. It's probably a slow internet, right? So this is kind of what like a contact field looks like. And you can add fields here. It's super extensible. And let's just we'll just create a new contact here. So like search is right here because you're going to do that the most. You might add contacts. You might take in contributions. You might build an event. You might do a mailing. So to me, this hierarchy, these are kind of in the order in which you're going to do these things, the frequency, like left to right, which that makes a lot of sense to me. So, and what I want to do is just add something we can search on. So, address right here. So, let's just say Minneapolis. Okay. And we can do save and new, of course, and then we can, if you're going to bulk add a bunch of contacts. If you're moving to this, there's ways to import contacts, of course. Okay, so now what I want to do here is I'm just going to do a search here. Actually, we don't even need to, I don't think we even need to do an advanced one like that. But we can, I'm going to just find an individual with, oh, okay, so I didn't need to do advanced. So anyway, so for the searching, the coolest part about this is they have this thing called smart groups, which is like a saved search. So if you want to do a mailing based on a criteria, you do a search, you find like, okay, this makes sense, these are who I want, and then you can go into the mailing thing and send it. So so we have contacts, which can be part of households, can be part of organizations, kind of like we were saying there. So let's do a mailing, since that's the cool part anyway. And so this is the thing that I was saying looks, looks and behaves sort of like a MailChimp or Constant Contact. And it's pretty good if it comes up. There we go. So, and again, super intuitive. So we have these kind of like these 3 steps, so we're going to select like, we're going to give it a name, and if you have multiple from addresses, you can select that, of course. So like you might have membership, you might have events, at your organization, and then under here, under recipients, we have you can send to specific groups. So like I have a test smart group here. You can have sort of stages along the way. And you can have ad hoc groups where you just put people into it. So I have this one called Test Smart Group, and it tells me there's about 2 recipients. So it does kind of a quick like cached search and shows you like approximately how many people are going to be there. We have tokens, and you can use these in the emails too. So you have all these options, kind of like tokens in Drupal. But again, it accesses all the CRM data. And we hit continue, and you can have multiple templates to pick from. So we'll just take this basic one, and we'll just kind of move on here. And then we have all these block options over here. So like you want to have like just a giant image at the top, and you want to have 2 little sections here. Did I drop in the wrong place? There we go. And then we can just WYSIWYG change these images out. We can add, when we're in here, we can add tokens, like I mentioned. So if you want to say like Dear John, you can totally do that. And everything has these options over here on the left. And so then when we're kind of done, we can just do a test run. So if you do a lot of mailings, a lot of times you'll have to do like a proofing group of people to check over your email, make sure you don't have any typos. So we can send it to a group in here, or we can send it to a specific email address, or we can just hit the preview here, and it'll preview it kind of live. And so if we like all that, we can close it off and go to send it. Okay, so then when we're on the sending, again, we have some advanced options over here, but the really easy stuff is you want to send it right away, or you want to send it, tomorrow, right? You want to have it scheduled. And got to put a time in. Okay. And then, so we'll submit it. And the cool thing is then these are all the mailings. So you have a list, you kind of have an archive of all of the mailings that have been sent, who sent it, whether it's completed, canceled, or scheduled. So there's a few that are scheduled here. So, did I do okay with that? Yeah.
Is it for big mailings and hosting with this throttling? Is there a way
Yes,
of
super good question.
grouping them?
Yeah, super good question. So, so I don't know about like grouping them. Like,
If you have 200 an hour, you do.
yeah. So, so you can use things like you can use integrations. So, like, there's the what's the Mailchimp is Mandrill. So you can use like those like triggered email services. What's the other one? Like SendGrid. Yeah, yeah. So you can of course use services like that. But again, think when you look at this as like, okay, we want to get up and running. We're a small nonprofit. They probably don't have tens of thousands of recipients, right? So, I mean, some of them might, right? And they could use this, right? So,
The implementation we have uses an open source type of email dispatching thing called Postal, I believe it is.
I couldn't remember what the name was.
It's similar to like
Yeah.
a SendGrid or Amazon SES type of thing. It just not through email mechanism, just through its API. It accepts the email and then dispatches it out per its own mechanisms.
What is the like theming, and when you send an email, does it do the inlining of the CSS and the templates and building those different blocks?
So for email, yeah, for the CSS to work, yeah, it would have to. So, I mean,
Yeah, I think it's probably a little more complex than that. What we saw Elliot click into was a theme called VersaFix, and that's provided with the library
Yeah.
that does all that. And that's actually got some functionality built in to where you can set some colors, like almost like style guide-ish type of stuff. And then if you wanted to really customize like the look and feel of your emails, at that point you could roll your own theme in place of VersaFix, and then we use that instead.
yeah, I like the easy stuff though. So, yeah, yeah.
Does it have the ability for a subscription form that would pull into the database?
For sure. Yeah.
And also unsubscribe, so if somebody wanted to unsubscribe, it has that feature.
Yeah, yeah. So, so in the all the contacts.
So I believe that's how you create a subscription, is essentially creating a contact.
Yeah.
And
Right. So they'd be added as a contact. Oh, wonderful.
So if you have a form online, they want to subscribe to the newsletter.
Yep. So yeah, they could just sign into it, and then so in each contact there's subscription. There's like, do they prefer plain text email? Do they prefer SMS as their contact? Do they prefer phone? You can create smart groups based on that.
Would you do what he's doing in a Drupal form?
Yeah.
Or contact message, whatever they're called now, and then import it into the CiviCRM part?
Yeah. So, I mean, you can build any kind of integration you want to, right? So there are some that are, easier than others, and there are some that have already been built. But yeah, obviously, since you're in Drupal, yeah.
I believe Civi provides some type of like public-facing mechanism for people
Yeah.
to like create a contact of their own. Another thing that's widely used up through Drupal 7 is web form integration, and that's actually one of the big things that Civi's working on right now. I think when we were in Calgary, they kind of concluded the strategy. They basically needed some Drupal people just to kind of guide them through what the best way to do it was. But at this point, it's just implementing whatever functionality to connect web forms in Drupal 8 to Civi. So I mean, it's not necessarily only contacts you want to create, but I think that's one of the biggest use cases in it.
So actually, I did a video run through of, I don't know if our internet's not super good right now, but I did a video that runs through how to do just that, how to add contacts to a form. Yeah.
Does it integrate with 80 groups?
With
Active Directory?
Active Directory, I don't know. I'm sure it could. I'm sure somebody's probably done that, but I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the use case for that would be, just because it's Civi is essentially tracking all the contacts and all the groupings and relationships of them. I suppose that it's probably feasible to do that. It may or may not exist. But
Yeah, or maybe you'd have to do it it could be like an Active Directory server of some kind. But yeah, I don't know. That's a great question. Yeah, I mean, so that's a consequence of, I mean, it's open source, so like we can all build it, right? That's always the answer. But the focus isn't on enterprise so much as like nonprofits, and they're not super heavy Active Directory users. Some are, but like by and large, I would say not.
By and large, they're heavy like Excel.
Yeah, right. That absolutely true. Absolutely true. So that's the thing. That's what we find here, because cost is an issue, right? So CiviCRM is it's free, obviously, but like it's even easy. It's pretty low cost even to get implemented, right? And the competition isn't other CRMs in most cases. It's Excel, like for real. Yeah. So hopefully I didn't stumble through that too much. And stop me if you have questions, because otherwise it's just going to be kind of more of the same. So. So I kind of pulled this out and zoomed it in a little bit so you can see a little better. So when you're creating mailings, you can obviously create drafts, but you can schedule things like I said. You can do some A/B testing, and again, it can integrate with SMS. So like you can have some actual like targeted, intelligently planned campaigns. So groups, like I said, I can drop these 3 people into a group and say they're a group, or we can base it on any kind of search, and that becomes a smart group. So smart groups have to do with any kind of criteria that's kind of built into Civi, and you can of course add fields too. So that's interesting. And I don't know how much time we got, so I might circle back to this because the internet was kind of bad. So,
since it's a saved query, the group will expand as people that meet.
Yeah. So it's so like if you're familiar with like I think they're still called smart or saved searches, and like so it used to be like in iTunes you could create like a smart playlist. So if you've ever done that, like it's exactly the same kind of thing. You add new songs and they get added automatically to the playlist based on your criteria, and this is really the same sort of thing. So sign-up forms, that's what we were just talking about before. You can have private sign-up forms that are kind of internal to the organization based on Drupal security criteria, but you can have public ones. In the video that I did, I set up a public one. And one cool thing about this that might seem really obvious to all of us, right? But they're mobile accessible. So, you can put people out in the field. So you're not necessarily having end users fill these things out, but you can be, going around and doing surveys and getting everybody's information that way. Membership is, of course, kind of a crucial thing to lots of groups, not necessarily nonprofits, but some nonprofits as well, where they want to have members-only content. So that's where some of the Drupal integration things come from. But also you might want to have private communication, so you can set up these membership groups for mailings and, again, those marketing contacts too. And payment. So the payment integrations that are kind of in the core CiviCRM are PayPal and Authorize.net. I think I said that before. But you can add more through extensions, and Will said we're working with IATS, which is another payment processor, to get that kind of built in. One other cool piece about this, it is a CRM, so you're keeping track of all this information. You can set up recurring payments very simply through there. So you can say this is an annual membership, and the year comes up and they get charged again. So on a similar token, you can set up automatic reminders. So you can have, of course, reports that can list all sorts of criteria, but you can record personal touch calls. So if you record a call, there may be some integrations that you can do too. But even if you're just picking up the phone calling somebody, if you use this as your note keeping device, you can select some checkboxes and insert things, and you can send out mailings based on those. So if you say, like, you could have a checkbox that says follow-up call in 3 weeks or something, and then you can have smart groups, or you can have searches, whatever. So this is kind of about the import-export. Like by having this very tightly coupled with Drupal, you can take advantage of some of the features of Drupal, but also expose parts of the CRM sort of publicly without having to do this like import-export thing. So like if you have And like you can have like an embedded form for MailChimp or something, but if you want anything more advanced than that, it becomes kind of difficult to gather the information in Drupal through a web form or whatever and move it into an actual CRM, right? Anything to add on that? Will knows way more about
Well,
that stuff.
they literally are co-located in the same database.
Yeah.
So they have access to each other's data. There's an API that like the Drupal integrations use to query CiviCRM. We're sponsoring a Civi entity integration, so we'll take the various entities in CiviCRM and turn them into Drupal entities. I guess technically it exposes them as Drupal entities, but by living together, they fundamentally have access to each other and can.
Yeah, so even if you had to write custom PHP code to do this stuff, they are sitting right in the same database, so you can build out all sorts of things, right? So this is I kind of covered that already. So membership directories is another thing that might seem really obvious, but it's kept up to date automatically. So I don't know, like for example, like the camp here, right? If we want to have a list of all the people that are registered and everything, that could be automatically created, right? And that's a built-in Civi feature. You don't have to do any custom programming. You can create membership directories that can be public, or based on certain criteria, could be private. So these can be based on like basically anything you want, and it's pretty easy to set up. So we had like twice as many slides when we did this in Chicago, so that's why I'm a little fumbling, like which things should I make sure to cover. So I'll try to demo the membership a little bit. So this is just some notes about what we've done here. So we're working on this thing called Round Earth, and we're trying to meld the best parts of Drupal 8 and CiviCRM. We've partnered with a number of nonprofits. We're kind of getting finished with a bunch of those right now, and we may do some more. Some specifically chosen ones maybe to kind of help move the platform forward, with the eventual goal of having as turnkey as possible a solution that people can just, a nonprofit can inexpensively go and just say, I would like this, and they pick out a theme, they change some of the things, and they're good to go, right? That's like the eventual goal. So what's sort of built in, and this kind of changes all the time based on input from some of these customers, but we have, of course, all the things that are kind of built into Drupal 8 already, but also image carousels, photo galleries, some enhancements to the WYSIWYG, some built-in content types. We may have content workflow, depending on input, and there's some SEO things built in, some anti-spam things built in. So that list kind of changes all the time, so it's more than just Drupal 8 core. Similarly to CiviCRM, the email functionality, I think, is not officially like a core CiviCRM thing, like if you just downloaded it and installed it. Some of those features are built as extensions as well to CiviCRM, which is, there's different ways of looking at things. We always, like Drupal 7 had not much in terms of features. Everybody downloaded the same 60 modules and put them all in there, right, for almost every site. To me, that's sort of how CiviCRM feels, like on a little bit lower scale. There's like these same extensions that people are throwing in there for every opportunity. Whereas like Drupal 8 seems to be kind of trending more towards putting more in core. And there's pros and cons to both, I think, as we all know. So for our second beta, if and when we actually really end up doing that, we are looking for other nonprofits. So if you know any, please send those our way. And last slide. So that's more info on Round Earth. So hopefully we can talk through any questions or anything after this, right? So that's all the slides I had. I kind of want to make it all the way through all the slides. So, any other questions? Yeah.
I assume, I didn't look too far in depth in it, but I assume other CRMs like HubSpot, whatever else,
Yeah.
have Drupal modules that integrate pieces of it. Is there,
Yeah.
what makes this one like really stand out?
Because it's in the same database. Yeah.
And it's open source.
Yeah, and it's open source. So, like, we use HubSpot right now. Like, that's why I mentioned HubSpot. I don't think it's that popular, but like we use that. And so there are pain points in that because I'm a chief culprit. Like keeping things up to date is a pain because it's like this separate thing. So we have our communications and our emails and all this stuff. Everything's kind of separate, and then HubSpot is kind of over here, and like we have to. There's a lot of like manual, monkeying around that you have to do. We don't do mailings through there. We do mailings through MailChimp. So like I see the pain points, and we're working on client things in these nonprofits right now. Otherwise, we'd be using it ourselves. I'm confident of that. Like at least for that like bulk email piece. Yeah. Did you have something to add?
Yeah, so if a client is coming to you and says, I want CiviCRM, what do you tell them when they say, well, why don't we use WordPress?
I don't know. So that hasn't come up super much. I mean, mostly because like they're coming to us in this case.
Okay. Or what would you say if I asked you that? I know why.
So
Drupal, but, I mean,
yeah, I mean, so we have Drupal experience, right? So like we're like probably a little overboard on like loving Drupal. If there's a use case though, like I guess the main advantage is we're Drupal experts, so we would build it in Drupal. But if you say this sucks and you want to take it somewhere else, like your CRM data, you might have to do a little work, like especially if there's any integrations built. But like all your data, you can just move over and you can do it on WordPress.
like the entity connection thing you said?
So I think they say Civic can be put into all these different platforms, but it's the like integrations between the platform and Civic. So Civic itself will run in all these things. This is the core Civic functionality is there. I believe all the extensions should mostly just go, but it's for instance, Drupal's like enhanced integrations are these contrib modules that provide extra functionality. Like we've got a couple that assign roles based off of membership or group status. So
Just automatically send them a welcome to our site. Here's how you log in.
well, it's just as an action happens in Drupal, a role is granted or removed, or the opposite in Civi, as membership or group relationship is added or removed, it matches them, but it'll reflect back on both sides. So things like that won't necessarily exist in other platforms. But my impression from the Civi community is they're predominantly Drupal. So when we were up there a few weeks ago, I think I'm going to say at least half of the stuff is in Drupal, probably significantly more. It just seems to be much more widely embraced by Drupal implementations.
We're hoping to make that even better. So yeah.
And also, I mean, the clients themselves seem less concerned about what CMS it's in.
Yeah, that was sort of the main takeaway. Like early on when I was kind of going through things a little fast, for real, they care more about their CRM than the CMS, and that makes a lot of sense. So they ultimately they don't really care, I mean, I'm biased, of course, but for an end user, I don't think Drupal's harder than WordPress. Like, I honestly think it's just as easy. How hard is it to go to hit add content, right? And that's all they usually want to do. They want to put up some blog posts, or I don't know. From the Drupal end of things, they might not even need much else, right? So ultimately, it's like a blog thing, and they might have some private content though. And so those kinds of things, I think, Drupal lends itself to more than WordPress, yeah. So I think the biggest thing is, I would say to somebody, we just want to use WordPress, I'd be like, well, do you want to have granular control over who can see what kinds of content? And I guess that would be the main differentiator for me on that, yeah.
So I heard you mention something about shared database.
Yeah.
In D7, I thought that Civic had its own, like a whole separate database.
So, they're sitting on the same server typically. So, if you have permissions, if the site owner, the user on the server, you have access. You can access that stuff. So that's the main advantage. All that stuff is physically there. So whether it's in a different MySQL database, it's on the same database server. Good question. Yeah, I mean. And I would say you want to keep it sort of separate, because who knows, 5 years down the road, like maybe you do want to go to WordPress, right? So like having some separation there is ultimately good to be able to like migrate the data. But you have access to everything for like public facing things. So if you have events and you want to like pull out, hey, these are the first 5 people that signed up, you know, you can do things like that.
Can you have levels? Think more like political. Okay. You might have different levels of access.
Sure, absolutely.
I loaded it up one time on a
Yeah.
website, and we loaded voter database now. And nobody wanted to spend the time to do the massaging you had to do for the tab. I mean, some work just fine.
Yeah, so if you want to have different users be able to access different types of content, sure. Yeah, and then so again, the whole point is to have a tool that can hopefully save you time or money, right? So being free is great, but if it's complex, you don't really want to, you're not going to deal with it. So for nonprofits, for them to be able to say, hey, you have a Drupal login to the site, and yeah, you can access some member-only content, but you can also update your email address and your mailing address, so we're not wasting money sending things that aren't getting to you, right? So that whole like rich user permission thing is, I think that's a huge benefit to having it on Drupal. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Can I show you anything else? Is there anything else that you guys want to take a look at?
What about developers? Anybody here? Very developer-y. So Civi's kind of interesting because it's got it's very API-centric. It's API first, like Drupal's trying to move towards. There's API where you can query and update all the things. It's programmatic, but then there's also like a REST implementation of it. There's some really interesting dev tools. There's an API Explorer built into it where you can go in and do like mock calls against the API, and it'll show you inputs and outputs in all sorts of different formats. JSON, XML, form, submission type, URL encoded data, things like that. Elliot was mentioning how they make a lot of progress in extensions. So their philosophy is leap by extension. So all of the kind of bigger, substantial changes happen in an extension before eventually they get moved into core. So what Elliot was showing you with the email, that's an extension called Mosaico. And that's a Civi extension, which actually, Civi is actually getting off the island as well, which implements a PHP library called Mosaico that, I believe it's PHP. So some other library,
has to be.
it's got to have some front-end component to it also.
Yeah.
But that's using this library that's provided by some third party elsewhere instead of constructing it all themselves. So they're already doing that type of stuff. And then also with the extensions, Elliot didn't demo it here, but there's an extension that actually is probably one of the first themes for CiviCRM, and it provides a very like clean, flat, bootstrappy type thing in place. I mean, it's the same data, but presents it in a much cleaner, modern, user-friendly format. So don't let this screen scare you. I went to Civi with this screen, and I thought, man, I went to a Civi camp, and I was like, man, my Civi is really ugly compared to everybody else's. But
so like this particular screen, there's only so much you can do with it, though.
Sure.
But yeah.
You mentioned like Civi's API, the round earth. Does the integration happen through the API, or is it mostly just by in the database, or like how is that?
There's not a whole lot of integration between Drupal and Civi. So only kind of the points where it needs to in order to like route requests. But then eventually, what that the way that's actually done is there's a module that provides the Civi integration. I think it's CiviCRM Drupal module, and so that gives you like the routing, handling, and some very like simple ways to actually just kind of bootstrap Civi when Drupal bootstraps, and then Civi's got some code in it that actually will reach into Drupal when it needs to. A lot of things that are relating contacts to users and things like that. But the API-wise, there's like a programmatic API, then there's also like a REST HTTP type of API as well.
Yeah, like I mean, to me, like I look at things. I really try to dumb things down. I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm dumb, but also like I've dealt with clients for a long time, and like I wouldn't want to have to work to do a bunch of integration or even like rely on really tight coupled integration, right? Because things can break, right? So what I've noticed is like the fact that you can create the reports that can be built in Civi. And all the like CRM data, like you can do almost anything you need to with that. So like I don't know how important like a tighter integration with Drupal really would matter. You want those user permissions, of course, but beyond that, I don't know.
Okay, cool.
Anybody else? Right? It's like nap time, isn't it? I don't know why my internet stopped working.
It happens.